what is the latest you have heard or seen on the big fella?
So right now, big fella he's made some changes to his personal staff in terms of his strength and conditioning and his training staff. He did stay in New Orleans a little bit longer than what he has normally done in the past. Normally he's gone and trained elsewhere for about a month and a half. He was at the facility a lot more this year than he had been in previous years. They released some pictures of him, I think, a couple of weeks ago that kind of got some fans buzzing a little bit. But
I'm out on the Zion picture
off-season
and
pictures.
Clip industrial complex. I'm out. I don't want to see it. It's the same thing with Ben Simmons. I'm out on the Ben Simmons Clip industrial complex. I don't care. I don't want to see him. I'm not being mean about it. I just cool. Zion did a dunk, and then there was remember the one? There was a speculation was like, is the floor bouncy?
Yes.
The floor appeared to like descend upon impact.
Yes.
Like I don't. How is he looking? Is he playing basketball?
He is. He played pickup with the guys a couple of weeks ago.
I heard the same.
When a lot of people were in town. I think basically everybody was in town, I think, outside of the three FIBA guys, Brandon, Dyson, JV. So he was in town. He played a little bit of pickup. He's doing more with them than he has in the past. But again, this is going to come down to health. They've been doing a little bit of some different things, trying to get him ready. I know that's been a focus for him and his family, getting his lower body ready, to play more than 30 games in a season. So, I mean, that's just where he's at right now, something he's only done once so far in his NBA career.
Sometimes you say those things, those numbers, and it just kind of breaks my brain for a second. Like, when you said only done once 30 games, it's like, man, we've been talking about this guy for a long time. Is the expectation that he plays opening night?
Yes, right now. Yeah.
I've heard the same. I've heard he looks rusty, but good. But in spurts, they're seeing like, oh, there it is. There's the guy who is by himself in elite NBA offense. And I don't mean by himself to minimize the contributions of others. It's just he's such an unusual player and such a forceful player that, for instance, in preparation for this podcast, I was like, let me see what the minutes have been. And obviously any Zion sample is going to be small, with Herb, Zion, and JV all together on the floor. Because I do think plan A for the Pelicans is to start CJ, Ingram, Herb, Zion, Valanciunas. Because from what I've heard, Trey can fit. I mean, Trey fits like a glove in the starting five. It's just a difficult conversation because CJ and Brandon Ingram are not coming off the bench at this stage in their careers. Brandon Ingram, obviously, he was like a borderline All-NBA player last year. And Herb's defense, they just need someone in that lineup whose first priority is defense. And Trey can do that, but Herb is an all-defense level player. So I was like, let me look up Herb, Zion, JV, because despite JV's, flirtation with shooting threes, and he does it, there's not a lot of shooting or spacing when you have those three guys on the floor, almost regardless of who the other two are. 119 points per 100 possessions, which would have been the number one offense in the league. The guy is just, he's not a bowling ball. He's like an atomic bomb that goes off in the lane, and there's just no precedent for it. And his speed, his explosiveness, his finishing, his ability to draw fouls, put back his own misses, pass out of double teams, do pretty much everything on offense, from screening to posting up to running pick and rolls to just being a complete menace to society in transition. It's spacing proof. It's scheme proof. If he's on the floor, they will have an elite offense, or a good enough offense. And by the way, this team was 20th in offense last year and 6th in defense, which, kind of like the Bulls in the East, who were 5th in defense, feels impossible given the personnel that they played. And they did get a little lucky. I think they had the lowest three-point shooting in the league, but they force a lot of turnovers. They rebound, and they don't protect the rim pretty well because they don't have rim protector. They prevent people from getting to the rim somehow, partly by allowing tons of threes. But I don't know that sixth is like sustainable for them, but if they could keep it at like 12th and get Zion off, if 55 games out of Zion and have the ninth best offense, now you're talking about a team that has a shot to make the playoffs. Have you looked at what their over under is?
I have not actually.
44 and a half. They're in a bushel of
It's
teams with like Dallas and Sacramento, I think, is only at 44 and a half from what I've seen. A bunch of teams in the West. And look, no fans of teams like the Pelicans in the Western Conference want to hear this. There are like 8 teams who, if you told me they finished third in the West, and this is a team that was 18-8 to start last season, I'd be like, okay, that's a nice season for them. Obviously, they stayed healthy, got lucky, got some breaks. Or if you told me they finished 11th in the West, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of makes sense. I'm sure somebody got injured and some other teams were better than expected. Yep. Like, that's the reality of the West this season. It's going to be absolutely packed. And some teams with really lofty ambitions are going to look up in the standings in March and be like, oh my God, are we going to miss the play-in?
Yeah. And I mean, to your point, I mean, from earlier, I mean, everybody in the West, except for really the Spurs, have ambitions to win games this year and are pushing to be in the play-in or be in the playoffs. And I think that's, again, it has come down to health so much since Zion has been in New Orleans that, you know, Pels fans start to feel a little jaded when it comes down. Every injury for Pels fans, they start to feel like, you know, it's the end of the world. It could be just a tiny sprained ankle for Jose that's going to keep him out. All right, he's not going to be healthy at the start of training camp. But then Pels go back and remember, man, you know what? Maybe if we had Jose for the last 2 months of the season, maybe things would have gone a little bit different. And that's just how much that, you know, Jose meant to the offense and how much just injuries have kind of taken out expectations for Pels fans and how much it's just hurt everybody. And it's not just Z. I mean, it's CJ dealt with the thumb injury that kind of affected him for the last 2.5 months of the season. Larry Nance was dealing with the shoulder injury that hurt him, and then the ankle sprain ended up keeping him out of the playing game. Obviously, Brandon has missed time. Zion has missed time. So it's a number of different guys who need to stay healthy for this team and to make it through. And that, like you said, if you look up in March and they're in 11th, I'm going to assume that, you know, somebody got hurt. And if they're third, I'm going to assume that nobody did and everything went right for a team for the first time in 5 years, but they had, you know, everything kind of breaks right for them. Maybe I shouldn't say breaks right.
But I don't even know. I don't even know like what a reasonable ideal projection for Zion is. Like, you want to say, like, if they get 70 games, like by reflex, when you talk about players, like, well, if they get 70 games out of LeBron, if they get 70 games out of AD, like, I can't imagine they're ever going to get 70 games out of Zion Williamson. If they do, that's amazing. I kind of default to like 55 games. I don't even, what is there a reasonable number on, like, he has no serious like miss weeks kind of injury. If he gets through a whole season without such a thing, how many games can he actually play?
So let's go back to his second season. That's the 1 year he played the most, 61 of 72. And really he missed the last 5 with a broken finger that maybe he could have played on. There was like that freak injury where I think he's going off a rebound with Kevon Looney. I mean, he was looking at missing 7 games that season out of 72. I mean, that's okay. You know, that's what we've seen of him when his one healthy season. Now that's been his one of 4. I mean, that it's not ideal. So, but I think you can, if you can get, and we can use the 65 since that's the marker for all NBA now. I think that would be, I think, ideal if you can get that out of him. If he can put himself into the conversations for awards for all NBA and everything like that, I think you have to feel good about what his season has done, even if he's coming in at 65, 66, and he's just right on the threshold. Like I said, the 1 year he did play, I mean, because of the broken finger, he sits the last 5 or 6. I think they were out of contention at that point. he could have played, missed a bunch. And it was just I think it was an ankle here or something like that. So, small injuries for him. I think even that year was I think he missed a game because he had a false COVID positive. I think that was an LA game. He plays the next game. So he has shown that in one season. So I think if you can get 65 out of him, that new award threshold, then you'd have to feel pretty good about what you can get from Z this season and what that would mean for the Pels.